one of the biggest sleeper hits of 2022 in terms of horror movies was Smile. So, of course, a sequel was inevitable. And now we have it. Let's talk about Smile 2. Guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my spoiler-free review of Smile 2. This is in theaters now, and it was written and directed just as the first by Parker Finn. So returning, to the world that he essentially created with that first movie. It was a big, big surprise hit. I think it came out right around the same time as that last Halloween movie, which was god-awful. So by comparison, Smile was like, oh, this is a nice breath of fresh air or what have you. But in any event, before we launch into the specifics of this movie, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are one of my subscribers already, thank you so much for that. Love having you guys return. But if not, please consider subscribing, click that notification bell, and of course, liking this video and commenting helps the channel out as well. So here we have really a completely new story, but all of the same kind of pieces involved, because the curse of the smile is still the same. So this takes place exactly 6 days after the ending of the first movie, in where the police officer Joel witnesses the suicide and then has to either pass it along or he's going to die himself. And you have to have witnesses. That's part of it. And I will say that rewatching the first one is probably a good idea before this one. I'm glad I went with my buddy. I didn't get to rewatch the first one. I was going to, and just didn't get to. But I'm glad that he did, and that I went with him, because at the beginning of the movie, he was like, okay, that's that guy, and this is, what's happening. And because, look, I watch hundreds of movies a year, and this is one that I saw one time 2 years ago. I enjoyed it a lot, actually. I think I gave it a B+. But, since then, a lot of things have come and gone in my brain. And so I was glad to have him kind of remind me of the rules, because this movie does not. I would not recommend seeing this one without seeing the first one, or at least reading up on it so you know what exactly is happening, what the premise is. Because essentially, look, they're assuming that you've seen the first one, know everything that's going on, and here we go. We're going to just launch you right in with the second one, which, can work sometimes. But for something that is sort of this specific, where there's like a lot of different rules to it, it might have been helped to get some sort of primer on those rules by some of the characters or whatever. So anyway, eventually the parasite or disease or whatever we're calling it gets transferred to this pop star named Naomi Scott, who has been out of sort of commission for a while. She had a lot of drug issues, and we learn about that because we see her interview on the Drew Barrymore show, where she sort of gives us her backstory. And she was in a car accident that killed her man like a year before, and so she's kind of on the comeback trail with that. But she's about to embark on this world tour, and she gets possessed with the smile. And she is played by Naomi Scott. You also have here Rosemary DeWitt as her mother / manager. And the whole movie, I was like, okay, I know this lady. So I had to look her up. She was Ryan Gosling's sister in La La Land. She was in that horrible Poltergeist remake. She was in a handful of episodes of Mad Men. She's done a lot of stuff, but just kind of one of those, that girls. And so you may not recognize her, but Lucas Cage is here as well. Miles Gutierrez Riley, Peter Jacobson. But really, it's mostly about this Naomi Scott. She is really great here, by the way. And I was kind of unfamiliar with her. She was in the new Charlie's Angels movie, which I did see. I know it didn't get a lot of love, but she was a part of that, and she was in a miniseries on Netflix called Anatomy of a Scandal. So she's done a few things, but she's great here. She's easily, for me, probably the best part of the movie. So let's talk about kind of the positives and the negatives of this movie, because for me, this is, kind of right in the middle. It's definitely a downgrade from that first movie by at least probably a whole letter. But some of the things I liked, look, her performance is great. And also, it's hard not to think of the movie Trap from earlier this year, because that also involves a pop star at a concert, and that sort of played a lot differently than M. Night Shyamalan movie. But this is a movie where, the pop songs are really good. The pop songs in Trap were fine. That was not one of my issues with that movie, but the pop songs here are very, very believable. It's believable how she acts, that she is a pop star going through some stuff, in the vein of maybe not like the biggest star on earth, but like, a Dua Lipa or something, somebody that's had, a lot of hits, huge fans all over the place, can play stadiums, but isn't, Beyonce or something like that. So I think Naomi Scott plays that perfectly, and she plays the, trepidation of, I don't even know what's going on in my brain, very well. She obviously is suffering from drug and alcohol sort of withdrawal. We learn that she's huge on the water. She's been drinking Voss the entire. This thing must have been sponsored by Voss Water. My buddy and I joked about that because every scene she's just chugging a Voss with the label right there for everybody to see. All right, that's fine. But she plays the role very, very well. And look, there is something to be said maybe for not showing the hands of the first movie either, because then the audience member gets to kind of react in real time with her character. As she's learning what the hell's going on, the audience maybe is getting clued in as well. I don't know. I would have preferred to at least know or remember what exactly the rules were, just because otherwise that first scene doesn't really make a ton of sense, I guess. But anyway, so I liked that. And I think they utilized it too much here, but I do like that creepy, like, it's kind of like warped music almost that horror movies have been starting to do lately. I think it's always rather effective. It gives me like, not vertigo, but it just gives me like this icky feeling, and I know that's the point. I think it's overutilized in this movie, and I think Parker Finn also overutilizes his use of like the upside down camera movements. There's like, he'll start a scene over and the whole cityscape will be upside down. I know it's supposed to be like disorienting and stuff, but I think he was utilizing that maybe a little too much as well. So I do also like that it is essentially a standalone story. There, other than in the very beginning, there's no real through lines from the first movie in terms of characters, and it certainly sets up the universe for a third installment at the end. But I think now we can move to some of the negatives. I believe that it goes on far too long. There are very few movies in the horror genre that I think need to be more than 2 hours. This one's about 2:10. Chapter 1 is certainly one of the exceptions. That was great, but that's such a dense book. But this could have easily trimmed out like 20 minutes or more, and you could have done that by trimming down just scene for scene. Some of the looks. She'll wonder what's going on in her apartment, and it will take her 15 seconds just to look over and see what's happening. I think, look, I get it. It's for atmosphere. But at the same time, I was like, okay, can we just look at what she's looking at, please? We don't need the 15-second head turn. And just minor tweaks like that. I'm not saying you need to excise any plot lines necessarily or even full scenes, but just some of those moments, I was just like, all right, let's move it along, show us a Voss water or something. So maybe a little tweaking in the editing room could have done this movie better. And also, I think it goes off the rails a bit too far. And we learn sort of what's happening by the end, of course. But it goes into that sort of comedic territory, and I'm not sure if it was meant to. Because most of this movie is not very funny, but there's, some elements towards the end where you're like, okay. And I laughed out loud a couple of times. And this is a movie where I also spent an equal amount of time, watching it like this, because it gets gory in places, which, look, the horror fans are going to love, and that's awesome. It works. So look, this is definitely a more middling affair for me. If the first one is a B+, I think this one is a full step down. It's still worth a slight recommend, But I am going to leave Smile 2 with a C+. But look, horror fans, I think are going to enjoy this. And it certainly, like I said, sets the stage for a third movie, which, look, I'll watch. I like the concept that we created, with that first one. And I can see why it was a hit. But this one, a little bit much for me. All right, thank you so much for watching Dan Reviews It. I'll see you next time.